Hi there, I'm Peter, and I'm here with Dan. We're both life license advisors from Return on Life. Today, we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to our hearts, the family cottage. And more specifically, we're going to talk about how to keep the cottage in the family. Dan, why don't we start with your experience in your family cottage?
Yeah, so certainly family cottage is near and dear to my heart. I've had a family cottage my whole entire life. I was lucky enough to be born into the right family, I guess you could say. In the early 1900s, the McMullen family bought 2,000, it was 2,000 feet of frontage on Lake Castragouigmog in Halliburton, Ontario. And that was my great-great-grandfather who bought that. And that morphed off into 1934. My grandfather building a cottage. And this same cottage is still mine today, this 1934 cottage. So skipping ahead to 1980, my father and my mom bought that family cottage. And then fast forward to 2015, my sister and I bought into our family cottage. So it is certainly a generational thing near and dear to my heart. And I spend every summer up Lakeside, Pete.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's literally generations of, memories, family memories that that have succeeded through this amazing, place that you can experience for obviously for generations and then potentially generations ahead too. My experience is a little bit different, but similar. We actually did have a family cottage. My grandparents had built a cottage up in Thornbury back in I guess it was in the 70s, mid to late 70s. That's so I remember being up there as a kid and spending some time, some in the summer, some in the winter, obviously do little skiing and whatnot. And, we were really close to the water as well. And, but by the time I think my grandparents had passed, it was the late 80s, early 90s. My mom had lots of siblings and they ended up just like selling the cottage, which at the time I didn't think twice about. But now I realize all the decades that have gone by, how how many memories we've actually lost. And quite frankly, what we end up doing as a family, we end up trying to rent cottages every summer. And it's not that easy, and we're kind of chasing those memories. So, this is why we kind of came together and said, okay, we're seeing a lot of a lot of this out there. We're trying to create conversation, right, and educate people on ways that they can. Because I think a lot of people think that either sneaks up upon them and they don't know what to do, but more so than anything, we want to help people in a way to help sustain those family traditions.
So, Pete, when we talk about helping people and when it comes to cottaging, what has the landscape changed? Like, what is the problem that we're trying to solve, at Return on Life and what we do? So maybe you can frame out the problem that's facing cottagers right now.
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of introduced ourselves as these life license advisors. And like, where does life insurance come into this? Well, it is pretty important, especially with the way things have gone with property values over number of years. And to your specific example, you've literally had this thing. It's going to be coming up on 100 years before you know it, right? And we know that property values have increased immensely over time. And what happens, probably the biggest problem that happens, because there's a few other things that we address, but the biggest piece is when property values have increased to this amount, it literally multiples from when, you're passing from generation to generation. When that first generation passes, there's a capital gains tax that takes place. And so most cottages now, you're talking about, well over $100,000, right? Just ready to, that you literally have to have on hand to pay out, because when someone passes, the first people that they're going to get their hands on your estate, or it's CRA. So, we're trying to build a bit of a plan to help address that problem. The other problem, I mean, there's other secondary problems, right? Like, what's the family plan? Who's going to take over the cottage? Other costs. There's always costs involved with the cottage. Dan, you would probably know more than I would on this, right?
Well, it's endless. Like you talk about the family boats or boats, and you talk about storage, and you talk about maintenance, and you talk about fuel, and then you talk about utilities at the cottage or property taxes at the cottage. Like it, I think the calculations that we built out for a common Canadian cottage, it's around $25,000 a year in operating costs just for a family cottage. So that's not a small chunk of money, Pete. That that we need to figure out a way to source that.
And those are, like those I would call planned expenses. There may be a lot of unplanned expenses, something happens, a roof goes or whatever, or you want to do some upgrades to your cottage too, right? You want to add a bunkhouse or, something else to help sustain it. And, the point is that the costs are not going any lower, right? And so you're spending time up there. To me, at the end of the day, we're talking about all this, we're talking about money, but in reality, these memories are priceless, right? These generations of memories are priceless, and we're trying to help maintain that for people. Um, and quite frankly, the biggest problem of all of it is not having a plan. That's really at the crux of all of it. Is it's waiting until that moment and then actioning at the end, and hopefully it works out, right?
And that's really where our role comes in, Pete, when it comes to the plan. And our role really, and what we really feel strongly about is helping people navigate the implementation of a cottage plan.
Yeah, and so that's a great segue to this, and really, at the end of the day, it's a lot. I mean, it seems like a simple process, but it can be a lot of moving parts to navigate, right? And so where we help out is, as you mentioned, like, let's navigate the process. One is to educate yourself, right? Understand what are the things you need in order to be able to maintain this cottage and the family for least the next generation, right? And then maybe even plan out beyond that. The next piece where we help out is bringing all the parties together to help build that out. We help on one component of it as lifelines advisors, but there are other parties that you're going to need involved. You're going to need lawyers and likely CPAs involved who are knowledgeable about it. If you have your own, that's great, but we actually have a team that is really specialized in this, and we help build out plans for this.
So we've talked about the problem, and we've talked about sort of return on life and Pete and Dan's role in all of this. Let's talk about the solution. What is the solution that we want to implement for the problem and what we're trying to build out?
Yeah, so just at a really high level, I'd say, where all starts is with the family. You have to have a really good family discussion and understand what the family's goals are. Maybe not everybody wants to keep the cottage, right? So getting those pieces in place. Next piece is to take those goals and objectives and bring it back to professionals. At the end of the day, the life insurance is great, on the funding side, but not without a proper plan. So we involve our colleagues, attorneys to build out the proper wills, estate plan, family trust, whatever elements you need in order to make sure that, family sharing plan, wherever that is, to make sure that we have a cohesive plan that can be executed on. And then finally, where we come in is on the funding. And funding is kind of funny, right? Because you're saying, what is life insurance? Well, yeah, there's so many different ways that you can fund a cottage, right? But one obvious is, which we don't want to do, this is kind of opposite what we were saying, is you could sell the cottage and pay your taxes, and that's basically it. But for me, there's like, how do we keep it? So one is, maybe you save the money, put it in the bank. But I don't know how many people were saving up, six figures or multiple six figures in the bank and ready to fork that out. That's just like a natural human behavior. I'd say most people probably aren't doing that. Another way is maybe to fund some other assets that you have, use some of those to either sell them or borrow from them to be able to fund it. Next one would be perhaps even getting a mortgage on a cottage. And if anyone's ever had, I don't know. I know the pain of getting a mortgage on my primary residence, let alone a cottage, has got to be on just at a whole nother level. So, um, where we come in is we actually work with cash value life insurance, and we believe it's a great complement to enhance whatever experience you may have used some of those other elements, but it's definitely a way that we can build a tax-free, pool of wealth that that will pay for some of the fund at the end of the state pay for these capital gains, but also we build it so that you can maybe address some of these other issues that come up through life. You can actually access some of the cash values while you're living to help maintain the cost of running a cottage.
Yeah, it really I love this because what we're providing people is a one-stop shop for implementing a plan for cottage succession or keeping the family cottage in the family. Don't have to go, run over to the lawyers and then get a different person to run over for life insurance and then try and find an accountant. We've built out a team, we've built out a process where people can come to us and we're able to service their needs and educate their needs. So yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head, Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, just to kind of wrap this up, this is kind of just a high level of what we do. If you'd like to, understand how we navigate the process, have a discussion to see if we're fit to help you out, please reach out. We'll have a button you can click below and set up some time with us, and we're happy to help out. All right. Thanks for now.